Assalamu alaikum. You are listening to Shakila, and we are on chapter 5 on page 26. It's called a Brotherhood Pact. And we're going to continue. And for those of you who are again interested in reading this book, it's called A Nobleman from Khorasan by Ustad Khaliullah Khalili. You can buy this online or on Amazon. Chapter 5, A Brotherhood Pact. Sakau and his friends were covered in blood. When they returned from the bloody Casa Burj battle, they were exhausted after being welcomed by Golchehra. They slept like knights in the palace, quiet with confidence. The chirping of birds and cock crows of roosters awakened Sakau and his friends. He and his friends went to visit Balahisar and Casa Burj. The mourning was not over. They had to bury the brave soldiers and pray for their souls. They were left in the graves with their clothes and buried barefoot side by side like a family. Children and parents shed tears and cried for their beloved ones. Mothers mourned for their sons. They were proud of them. People brought flowers and left them on the grave of soldiers. The cemetery extended from shrine of Shah Shahid to Lal Jabba Buland Kaman, and from Khoja Roshanoi to Khoja Safa. Balahisar was covered with fire and smoke. The city smelled gunpowder and blood. People cared for the wounded soldiers of the enemy, provide them comfort, and punished the traitors who betrayed their own motherland and had joined the enemy. The few betrayed the nation were shot along the Balahisar wall, and their dead bodies were thrown in a deep trench of Balahisar. No one knew what happened to the king and his wanton advisors. The night was almost there, and stars blinked in the sky. The moon shined and lit the graves of brave soldiers. People came in groups from all over the city and lit candles. The outskirts of mountains glared like light some day at night. It was a glorious moment. People had seen candle lights and glorious moments. People had seen candle lights and glare before when the king celebrated the princess' birthday, but people never felt proud as they did tonight. Many believed that candle lights over the grave of a soldier was the crescent of God. It was the 18th of Ramadan, and everyone got together and prayed. Mosques were filled with worshippers. The nation was touched by sacrifice and devotion for freedom. It was an auspicious night for the martyrs as they present their soul to their God. Golchehra invited Sakau and his friends for dinner. Sakau was known as Baba, father, among his friends. The candle lights were pallid in the chambers of guests in the palace. Lala and his friends had scarves wrapped around their waist. The bony handle of sharp blade was visible on Sakau's waist. He appeared stronger and muscular. His mashq, the bottle of water he carried during the wars, was hanged on the wall. The soldiers leaned their guns on the wall next to them. Dinner was served, and the soldiers begged permission to leave. Golchehra gave a handkerchief full of sweets and dried fruits to every soldier. Golchehra told Baba that his bravery and courage was heroic, and it has become a legend among bondwomen in the palace. Baba thanked and expressed his gratitude for the good words. Golchehra hesitantly asked him if he would consider her to be his sister. Baba smiled and accepted the invitation. Golchehra insisted that now it is the duty of a brother to visit her sister and inquire about her well-being. Baba and his friends left the palace and headed towards his homeland to meet his people. Chapter 6 is Storyteller. In a light blue night, in a light blue sky night, stars gazed back with humor and remorse. The queen's bed was decorated with silver and precious items on the terrace of the palace. She often laid back in her soft satin bed, and flowers around her bed perfumed the air. Silence governed the terrace in her chamber. Two bondwomen massaged the palm of her feet. She had a big bottle of fruit juice on a table next to her bed. Gulchehra was in her 50s. She sat next to the queen and constantly waved a handy fan made out of peacock's feather to bring fresh air and give the queen comfort. The waves of the fan created sways on the queen's hair. Like all the other slaves, Gulchehra had lost all her feminine feelings and wishes within the walls of the palace. She was sculptured, carved from a stone with no feelings, emotions, freedom, or will. She was a thing among properties of the king and queen. The queen laid her head back on a fluffy pillow and attire with golden buttons and waited for Gulchehra to tell her a story. Like every night, Gulchehra intuited, "I am bored of telling tales of Amir Hamza and 1001 Nights. I am going to tell her a new story tonight." Gulchehra was not feeling well, and it was difficult for her to not sleep at all. She tried to remember a new story that she had not told the queen before, but in her mind did not favor her. She decided to tell the queen her Gulchehra's own story. Gulchehra's life was untold story, and the queen really liked new stories. Once upon a time, there was a small village on outskirts of a high mountain. The mountain was covered with forest trees and snow. The village had fort as high and gigantic as the palace of princess. The fort belonged to a farmer who had many sheep and horses. People respected him as the father of their tribe. She had a daughter as beautiful and as stunning as an angel. Her father loved her more than he loved all her siblings. He took her to farm. He put her on the horseback and told her stories of their ancestors. Whenever the farmer ran into a teacher on their way, he asked him to teach her daughter how to read and write. Her mother loved and adored her. Every morning she woke her up with a kiss on the forehead and prayed for her safety and health. She hugged her for minutes, wished her to come home safely, and then let her go with her father. Her mother made her a mascot for her safe return. The mascot was covered with leather and wrapped on a silver coin. She hanged it on her daughter's neck to keep her safe. In summer, the temperature was high. She spent time with her father under shadows of a plain and sallow trees next to the river. The river provided chilling fresh air. At nights, she slept next to her parents. She counted stars and played with them until she fell asleep. In winters, she laid back next to a window in her room where she could cover herself with a blanket. She watched the snow on the farm. She loved natural beautiful snowfalls in winter, and tree blossoms in spring were her favorite theater. Many people in the village also called her father Mir of Bamyan. Her daughter was dear to everyone in their village. As she grew up, she became a fairy tale of beauty and prettiness. Her father stopped taking her to the farm, no matter how much she insisted on going with him. Once upon a time, her father went out for hunting, but did not return as usual. The day became darker, and the sun disappeared behind the snow-covered mountains. She was worried and fretted, watching roads and waiting for her father's return. She was frightened and could even hear her own heartbeat, painting faster and faster every minute. She walked ahead and looked closely for her father to appear from lanes of the forest covered with trees. She felt she was followed, but she could not see anything. She decided to go back to the fort and tell her mother that her father had not yet arrived. When she turned around, 2 hands as strong as steel grabbed her tight and locked her up. Her mouth and hands were tightened by black scarves in a matter of seconds, and she was placed on the back of a horse. She was a simple rural girl with an innocent soul and kind heart. She believed all humans are kind and gentle and merciful. She kept quiet, smiled, and ticked his head and neck with her little fingers. She hugged him from behind. The little girl became impatient and tried to unlock the knot from her eyes and mouth, but it was impossible for her little soft fingers and tightened hands. The horsemen speeded up. Sounds of the hoof of the horses touched the stones and echoed in mountain valleys. The horse ran as fast as a bullet, fire in a flower hill. She was in pain. She knew that her caring father would never let her suffer and feel pain. She was doomed. She was cursed to the fate of many other girls who she had heard about them from her mother. She attempted to jump from the back of the horse, but the stone-hearted butcher had tightened her up legs to the chest of the horse. After hours of ride, the horseman stopped and put her on the ground. The stranger freed her hands, mouth, and eyes. The moment she saw the light, she found herself trapped among fearful and frightening, narrow valley walled by 2 giant mountains. A man stood up in front of her. He had long black boots and his face was covered with a red scarf. His gun was dangling around his shoulder. His coarse whip on his right hand was as frightening as a dark night. She cried and screamed, but in total darkness and far away from humanity. No one could hear her. She felt pain in her throat and barely could swallow her own saliva. She begged for mercy and cried in front of him. The stranger in a hostile voice threatened her. "If you scream or cry again, I will kill you. I will skin you alive and then give your body to beasts and wolves." She kneeled and grabbed his feet and kissed his dusty boots and begged him. Tears from her innocent eyes touched her dark brown hair and reached the corners of her chain. A few drops of tear fell on the ground. It was an unbelievably heartbreaking moment that stones would have cracked. But the stone-hearted stranger grabbed her hand forcefully and put her on the back of the horse. He squeezed and tightened her legs to the chest of the horse. He covered her face with a black blanket and knotted her hands with a rope and speeded up. The princess became a bait and a prisoner of a total stranger. She whimpered all the way. She could not move even an inch. She was like a weak lamb caught by a wild wolf or a young pigeon hunted by a hungry eagle. She was blindfolded. She could not see the light and did not know the sunset and sunrise. The only sound that accompanied her heartbeats was the hoof of the horse touching the ground. She knew she was far away from home and humans. Fear dominated her, and she lost hope of getting back to the arms of her mother. The stranger stopped the horse occasionally after a few hours, put the girl on the ground, fed the horse, and tried to feed the girl with a mouthful of bread. It was the only time she could stretch her little feeble legs. The ground was full of barbed bushes. Every time she looked in the sky, blinking stars, tears rounded up in her eyes and cheek. It reminded her how beautiful mountains and blue sky of Bomian. She needed her mother to care for her wounds. She needed her brave father to save her from the cannibal beast. She needed her friends and help of people of Bomian. She needed everyone's help. No one knew how long she was on this doomed journey. She was weakened and palled. Fever, hunger, thirst, and sleeplessness conquered her piece by piece. Her chest had turned red. It was itchy. She was wounded, and she barely could breathe. Her legs and hands were powerless and breathless. journey continued. She often fainted and laid on the shoulder of the enemy. Chapter 7, Feeling Safe. After spending many traumatizing nights on the back of a horse, she was awakened by a striking light. She could not see anything for a couple of seconds. She felt she was blind. Once the blurry images were gone, she felt safe seeing women around her. She assumed her mother was also there too. "Mother, mother," she called. She rubbed her eyes, thinking she might be still asleep. Women around her who all shared the same fate tried to help and comfort her. But there was no medicine in the world that could replace her mother. She had a fever for several days and felt exacerbating pain. It took her a week to recover from wounds. She knew she was millions of miles away from home. She cried and suffered like a candle melting down inside in an oven. She was a prisoner in a nightmarish castle surrounded by tall walls and terrifying abnormality. Big enabled buildings, bulky walls, colorful rugs and carpets, bizarre flowers and trees, strange faces and weird dresses, erotic foods and unusual names, titles and dialogues. It appears she was in a different planet, a planet where only slaves and lords existed. It was a planet where right and wrong were defined by the owner and lord. It was a world where people were treated like objects. Slaves bent, bowed, walked with their heads down and their body like a snake crawled on the floor. They served the lords, polished and cleaned their shoes, and cooked, cleaned, and served them continuously. They were sculptures. They stood up on their feet for hours and never trembled from thirst, hunger, or cold. They only eat and drink when they were told. Cursing, beating, whipping, locking up were common. She had heard stories from her mother, but she never thought they were real. She had heard that when girls get pregnant, the ruthless men abort the innocent souls by beating up the girls. It was very painful. Many died from unbearable agony. Maybe her mother still prayed for her and made her talismans because the prison was not as horrible for her as it was in stories. Chapter 8, A Mighty Lady. After several distressing days, the poor girl was taken to meet the leader of the castle. She was called a mighty lady. The lady was a powerful and wise person. She leaned on her decorated soft scale throne. Her long tressed hair swung around her shoulder. Her precious golden rings attracted the crowd from distance. Two bondwomen with feather fans stood alongside her. She had a green, exquisite shawl around her arm. Many slaves were standing up and waiting for her command. The lady had aged and had fainted eyesight. She asked the girl to come closer. She checked her hands, feet, body thoroughly. She felt she was a criminal about to be punished for her crimes. Her hands trembled and her teeth scuffed like from fear. She looked at the ground. She's worth more than what I have paid. Give her a bath, clean her, find her new clothes. I have heard she can read. Tell the instructor to help her with her education. She's beautiful, seems to be from a noble family. She will have a special place in this palace. It was not difficult for Gulchehra to understand what was going on. Instead of punishing the monster, they paid him. She was sold like property. She was a slave. She must forgive her dreams and die in this castle like a prisoner. She would never be able to see her kind mother and a caring father. She was deprived of beautiful mountains, snow-covered forts, chirping birds, beautiful breeze of Bamiyan, and her childhood friends. If she were in Bamiyan one day, she would be buried in their village hills. Her grieving parents would come over her grave and cry. There would be flowers every spring and New Year on her grave. Now the prisoner was in oblivion. It was too much sorrow and woeful moments for her. Her throat clogged and she wanted to scream, but then she learned she was over the bed of the queen, and the queen was snoring. Thank you for listening, and inshallah we will continue on chapter 9. It's called Flower and Rose Weather on page 20. And we will see you next time. Thank you, and Khuda Hafiz. Khorasan Bapish.